Hi, I'm Justine, and today we are going to be discussing copyright laws and the classroom. Now, this can tend to be a pretty touchy subject. There's a lot of blurry areas when it comes to this, and actually, not a lot of people know that copyright laws get broken more often than we really think about or know about. Um, and so, today we just really want to talk about what's going on in classrooms today and why is it such a big issue now as opposed to what it was just a few years ago. So we'll get started. Okay, so today's classrooms have done away with the basics. They're nothing like what they used to be. There's been major advancements in technology, and this has led to huge changes in the way that teachers teach and the way that students learn. So the basics that we have of chalkboard and chalk, they're essentially things of the past. And what we are left with is things like smart boards and tablets and um, even projectors from the start of this transition into just a new technology. It's really led to different ways of teaching and different ways of learning, but it brings about a lot of different um, intricacies in how we're supposed to go about safely educating our students. So instead of just using our own original work on a chalkboard, teachers find themselves using original work of other people's, and it's a very common thing. But we need to know that there's a fine line between what's actually legal and ethical and safe, and we need to be really respectful of people's original work out there because a lot more things than we think are actually copyrighted. So, digital information is everywhere in the classroom now. Um, Original work is all over the internet, but what can actually be used by teachers and students legally, that's where these fuzzy lines come in. Teachers have to educate themselves in order to educate their students correctly. Now, there is fair use, which fair use applies to anything for educational, nonprofit purposes, meaning there are a lot of things that teachers and students can use, like in PowerPoint presentations and things of that sort. It's really okay um, as long as the information being used is being used in the same context that it was made for and to the same sort of audience. It's usually okay. Um, there's not going to be any law breaking that's going on there. But things get a little fuzzy and people don't really know because when you start making something like a PowerPoint for your students, you add pictures from the internet and quotes from certain people, and then you can even add things like music, and so it really starts to get difficult to know what you need to take action over in getting permission for. So all of this digital information, it's being used every day, and teachers, it's really up to them to educate their students. There's this domino effect going on of uneducated people on copyright laws, and really they're just not having the attention that they deserve. It's kind of become so common for things to be stolen in a way, ideas to be stolen and used as someone else's original work that people don't even think about it very often anymore. And copyright really is a big issue. So, how do you go about getting permission? If you know that you want to use a certain piece of work for something in your classroom and how do you do that? I think that's a fine line there, is that if more people knew how to go about actually getting permission, then maybe they would be more apt to actually do it. So there's things like the Copyright Clearance Center, or the CCC. They offer electronic and photocopy-based transactional permission services. Now, this can be just for one thing, or you can sign up for a subscription license, and this covers an array of works within a certain license repertoire. So, if it's one thing for a subject that there's one particular author that you want to use information for in your classroom, it covers that without having to have a transaction for everything that you're using of theirs. Um, but really, when it comes down to it, any written document between the user and the original author is acceptable. And it's one of those things where it's just better safe than sorry. Um, just to have it in writing is the most important thing. Somehow have it in writing, have proof that you were given permission to use a certain piece of work. So, if you're feeling uncertain about something, there's 3 simple questions that you can ask yourself. Does copyright law protect this work? Am I trying to use and copy it for myself as my own work? And does any exception to the law apply, being fair use? So, this is something that I would say is very important to teach students. And students of today need to know this starting very young. We have kindergartners and first graders that are learning to use technology at an unbelievable pace. And so even they need to know that when they're looking at work, at others' work on the internet, and they're using it, they're starting to use it for school, they need to know, hey, am I trying to use this? They need to know how to think and how to ask themselves, am I using this for um, my homework, and am I making it sound like myself? And they need to know, it's even more important for them to know now that technology is such a big um, plays such a big part in their education process, because now it's so much easier to find out, really, and it's so much easier for it to happen. And it's not that any teacher purposely breaks a copyright law, and I don't think any student would purposely do it either. Um, but classrooms need to become an environment that copyright laws can really be talked about in an open manner. And when you tell students, when you open up the conversation and you tell them, about these 3 questions they can ask themselves, you can take it and you can have them incorporate it into their personal lives. There's things like pirating music and movies off of the internet that students, play a big part in. The younger generations um, have a lot to do with that illegal downloading, and they really need to know that it affects more than who they think. If you can just change the perspective of how your students view work on the internet, um, they need to know that it's not all about entitlement. Just because they have access to this information so easily on the internet does not mean, per se, that they're entitled to have it and to use it as their own. They need to know that things like the music that they're illegally downloading is hurting that artist that they say that they love. That's really hurting them, because that's how they make their living. So there's probably some double standards going on there, and students just need to be more informed about it, really. So when in doubt, get it written out. That's a good thing to say. Always make sure you have permission. And a lot of things, um, like the music, it's kind of more common sense than anything. You kind of know if it's being illegally downloaded, or If you know if you're trying to, if you'll really know if you're trying to use something as your own work when it's not. And then finally, I want to talk. There has been, ever since around 2002, when technology really started to come into the classroom, there have been things like the TEACH Act, which is the Technology, Education, and Copyright Harmonization Act. This was put into effect to try and find a proper balance between what's fair for the original author and for educators and students. This came about because it was so clear, even that early on, with that little of technology back then, that this was going to cause a huge issue when it came to copyright laws. And now that there's tablets and smart boards in almost every classroom, it's a huge issue. But it's important to know about things like the TEACH Act, to know that, you know, there are certain things like this and like fair use that do protect educators, but it's also very important to be that better safe than sorry kind of person, and because we really want to teach our younger generations that it's not okay to use other people's work. So really just enjoy the endless possibilities that we have of using this and sharing this great information through technology with each other, but just learn and educate your students on how to be respectful and to safely and legally use other people's work. So good luck and happy educating! Thank you.